one of the reasons that I seem to almost have a mission of sharing information, of being an open artist, about sharing what I do, about trying to encourage other artists to do what they want to do, is because I never went to art school. I didn't even graduate high school. So I feel like in my life I've had to work much harder to catch up. Sometimes artists aren't so giving with their techniques, that I always appreciated when I did meet someone who was very talented and willing to show me how to do something. I think that's part of my personal mission as an artist, is not only to do my work, but to also encourage other people to do what they want to do in art. The way to start is just by starting, is just by doing. I'm Dave Pressler. I do sculpture, illustration, painting, and animation, and fabrication. So the show being titled Idea to Object, take the idea in your head and how do you bring it out here? How do you bring it out into a form where you can share it with the world? My whole skill set evolved, starting with drawing, moving into sculpture and other mediums simply out of necessity. Sometimes my drawings were a little too flat, especially if we were working on something where we were proposing that these characters be puppets or these characters be animated. And so one of the things I started to learn was how to sculpt, because if you walked in with a 3D sculpted character, suddenly it's like everyone can get it.
You know, I knew him as a draftsman, I knew him as a painter, and when we decided to make what they call a toy, I found out that he had an incredible sculpting ability.
Dave has sculpted several toys for us. We reproduced Bombcat, which he sculpted for Anthony Osgang. The Angry Clobber Monkey, which is his design. And I thought his stuff was phenomenal.
You want to take their idea and vision and sculpt it to the point where it really looks like someone could look at their work and one-to-one it makes sense.
When someone like an Anthony Osgang would come to him and say, this is my art and I want to make it into a limited edition vinyl sculpture. In that sense, Dave's skill set involves an empathy and a sensitivity and a lack of ego that allows him to simply amplify and execute his friend's vision.
And so anytime I worked with anyone who had been doing it for a longer time than I had, I would just pay attention to what they were doing. If anyone ever had any tips for me, I would listen, I would watch. I was starting out learning character design, learning production design. We got a development deal with the Henson Company in the early 90s. We did one show called Brats of the Lost Nebula. That was the one big show that we did. I designed some of the characters. That was my first production designing gig.
Dave's style is kind of singularly his own, actually, and it's kind of a nice combination of solid technique and a somewhat light-hearted but spirited kind of view of the world.
The goal with character design, I think, is sometimes you want to be able to look at one character and know a story or have an idea of what this character is all about just from one pose. You have to think of the character's inner life to really get what is that outer life about.
His work is accessible. This alone will allow the audience to sort of enter into Dave's world and hopefully be inspired to then create their own worlds.
I think he really blossomed when he started doing animation. His characters from the beginning were ready to be animated. They already sort of exuded some kind of personality. So it was just a natural thing that Dave became an animator.
In 2002 was our first foray into animation, where we did a show called The Save'ems. And it was the first time I felt like I really did a cast of characters that looked as out there as I wanted them to be and as we wanted them to be. In a character design, you want something original. You want something that, where if somebody looks at it, they'll go, oh, that's from that show. That looks like a Dave Pressler type thing.
Well, stylistically, I think he liked bulbous bodies with little appendages. Big body with tiny hands must be Pressler.
Robot Monster originally came from an idea I had a long time ago. when Nickelodeon contacted me, I had piles of art because I had been thinking about this idea and drawing it and painting it for years. You're never going to go wrong as an artist to make things. It's because nothing's better than if somebody says, well, what do you want to do? To be able to pull out a sketch pad and go, here, I will show you, you know.
Dave and I have worked on a handful of projects over the years. We helped him with his Robot and Monster figures from his show with Nickelodeon. His characters have a lot of personality and have a lot of character. We actually taught a class together at Nickelodeon where we taught them how to sculpt and how to make molds and cast their own toys. It was a lot of fun.
With his sculpting, his painting, his drawings and animation, everything feels like it's tied together. With Dave's work, everything still was Dave.
When you have an idea for a character, I mean, some people will write the dialogue, some people will act it out. But for me, I think if I just keep sculpting it, drawing it, I kind of will it to life just through to keep pushing it. Like, keep drawing them, keep sculpting them. And then through that process, I figure out what's the inner life, or, you know, what's funny about these guys, what's sweet about them, what's their relationship about.
The end result of what he does could be so many different kinds of things, that the skill sets that all have to go into it have to be so impossibly diverse that it really does end up with more of like a factory floor feeling.
I make art out of stuff I found in the garbage before.
You don't need to think of him like at the easel with the palette and, you know, the proverbial beret. Like, he's a guy at work.
Dave Pressler is able to be both the thinking man's artist but also extremely blue collar. It is a very important sort of focus and direction, is that not only are you making what's in your heart, but you're making what other people want in their heart, what people would want to put on their wall.
Because basically, selling an idea to me is not just necessarily a cash exchange, but I think it's the commerce of feelings too.
I think all of us wanted to start an art collection, but only knew about the blue chip galleries, only knew about spending thousands of dollars on a yellow dot on a white canvas that meant nothing to us. If someone comes in here and is like, you know, I've always wanted an art collection, but it's never really spoken to me. I think that Dave's work and a lot of what we show here at Gallery 1988 relates to that person.
One of the aspects of gallery showings that always inspired me and made me want to be a part of that world was the freedom of expression. And to me, that was the most inspiring part, was I could do whatever I wanted with no notes. Part of the layout of the Idea to Object show is to kind of follow the process from the most basic way of starting an idea, where we go from drawing, you draw on a Post-it, you draw the smallest little sketch or doodle, to actually taking it to a painting, then to a sculpture, and then ultimately, for me, to animation. I've tried to lay out the story of this cycle of creation. Any direction you want to go in of the cycle all leads back to you sitting down and doing the work in your workshop.
Boundaries mean nothing, and you can get a job making art for the movies and have the life you want, no matter what sort of like random suburb of a blue collar community you might be coming from, that there's actually something there for you.
I'd say you're going to enjoy it. This is something you're going to love. It's whimsical. It's not serious, and it's like a vacation from reality.
Just seeing the universe that revolves around his head. Probably shouldn't touch the artwork, but I always want to touch it. I always want to touch everything that he makes.
Don't touch the robots. They're still fragile.
You know, all of his figures, all of his ideas really come from his heart, like really come from him. And these are all of his babies, and he really puts a lot of thought and work into creating his pieces.
My hope for you is that if you come to the show and you're inspired enough to do art, and it's giving you inspiration or encouragement to do your art, I think the best thing in the world is to go home and just start making. Shut up and draw. Shut up and paint. Shut up and sculpt. Shut up and just do what you want to do. I think that's the main thing. Let's not find excuses. Let's not get insecure. And if we are insecure, which we all are, it's okay. Let's not let that get in the way of what we want to do. We're only here for a little while. In Lancaster, I mean. No.